And we're live. Welcome to Omi Inca's production studio. You've got Omi Inca 7 live and coming to talk to you about, is stress the leading cause of diabetics or diabetes? Now, I have been talking to you quite a bit about diabetics not being a disease and being a deficiency. And I'd like to come back to you again to uh, continue to discuss this topic. There are so many African Americans and people of color who are being diagnosed with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. I'd like to talk to you a little bit based on my research and my journey to address predisposition diabetes with the change of diet. As I told you, it was a carbohydrate uh, complex problem where the body was exhausting itself with too much carbohydrates. And it is not a sugar problem, it's not a glucose problem, but a starch problem. And these starches are not starches that we've ingested excessively, but they're automatically produced in the body. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about stress and how stress affects the body and affects the position of predisposition diabetes. No one ever talks to us about stress, and we can alleviate the stress. If we were told that stress was the leading cause, then we would go into our various different prayer rooms or prayer closets, and we would do what we call self-help work. And that is meditating, using meditation to bring down the stress and breathing procedures to bring the stress down. That would compensate for a large portion of what is causing us, African Americans and people of color, to be pre-diagnosed with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and the doctor calling it a disease. It is not a disease. It can be treated through diet. And we must begin to prompt our doctors to talk to us about nutritional alternative procedures. And one of the nutritional self-help is meditation. Sitting quietly with yourself and meditating to bring your blood pressure down and to also bring the stress down. Now, let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, we have to look at alternative procedures. There is medication that's being given by the doctor that has all kinds of side effects. And I like to share some of that with you because if we are not aware that sometimes the side effects will outweigh the actual procurement of the so-called cure. There is no cure. There is no medicine that can cure any disease. It only suppresses the symptoms. Now, let's get into it. If we know that there is a diet that can help us to change our position, we need to look into it. But we need to also talk to the doctor about the medication that's being prescribed. Now, some of you are very familiar with the various different medications that are being prescribed. And I'm not going to call out all the names of the medication, but we do know that medication can cause E. coli, and that E. coli can grow in the intestines and cause a whole host of problems. And if this medicine is causing E. coli and lactic acid, which lactic acid can be very devastating to our body as a side effect, we definitely want to explore all possibilities for alternative natural nutritional cures. Now, I say nutritional cures because it's going to get to the heart of the problem. But we certainly cannot say that medicines are curing anything. If anything, they have side effects, and they damage the liver, and they damage the kidneys, and cause a whole host of E. coli to develop within our intestines. Those are side effects that we have to watch for: heart problems, tremors, dizziness, a number of things that I was told that the medication would cause. As I began to run down the list of all of the deficits or the possible side effects, I began to wonder if it was worth it to take any medicine at all, or maybe just change my diet. Now, there's a number of African Americans that don't know this, that once you create a whole host of conditions in the renal system, in the kidney system, in the pancreas system, you can literally cause a patient to have to come back to the hospital for more than just diabetes, but also for renal failure and high blood pressure. Now you got that patient hooked. They're coming in for 3 different procedures, and they have to have their medicine once they get started. And then now you've got a regular patient on a regular basis. If these conditions are not real and can be cured with the diet, then why isn't diet being prescribed? And why are so many medicines that have great side effects and can do harm to the body, like creating E. coli in the intestines and lactic acid that builds up in the body, that can cause heart problems and can also put a person in the hospital? Why isn't the doctor talking about the possibility of changing your diet, giving that a try first? Well, I demanded to my doctor that I give alternative medicine and nutritional diet a chance first. I am so glad that I made that decision, and I did not run off the course by going out to get a prescription filled, thinking it was going to save my life from a stroke. Well, I researched and I found out most of the time, diabetes does not cause the stroke. It is a medicine from the side effect that can cause the stroke. And amputations have also been noted to be caused by medications that one takes for diabetes. Now, so what are we finding out? You're not going to suddenly die of a stroke, and you're not going to lose you're not going to be amputated because of your glucose levels. We must understand this is related to the pancreas, and it's not about the high elevated sugars in your diet. It's the starches that cannot be digested in the body. So it sounds like a carbohydrate problem, which I talked to you about before. We have to find a way to change our diet to create a possibility of changing the complex carbohydrates in our diet and making sure that we're eating a balanced diet with the proper grains and nuts, and looking at what are the starches that are not agreeable with our body. We must understand that African Americans are lactose intolerant. We should not be drinking animals' milk. If we are not drinking mother's milk, the closest thing to mother's milk would be goat's milk. But African American are lactose intolerant and should not be drinking animal or cow's milk. Now, I want to say for the record, stress is a major problem. Look at all the stresses that are up on African Americans. We're stressed under one condition and then under another. But we can get around that stress by taking time out of our diet on a daily basis to meditate. Just sitting still with ourselves can take a lot of the stresses off. Now, why are we being bombarded with this caustic medication that can cause a whole host of side effects? Well, it seems like nobody really cares. If you are going to bring down the sugar level with these caustic medicine, and then on the other hand, kill the patient off with renal dialysis and pancreatic distressors, then you literally are doing the patient no good. But there are a number of good doctors out there now. There are a number of good doctors out there now who are looking at alternative measures, and they are also looking at how we can change the diet. We ought to go on to YouTube and start listening to some of our Aboriginal doctors who have background knowledge in our genetic makeup. That's right. Our blood types are even different, and our genetic makeup is different. After working in the allied health profession, as well as working in pathology, histology, and cytology, there was a lot that I learned about the human body. And I discovered that could these conditions such as high blood pressure, type 1 diabetes, and type 2 be brought on through diet? And I was correct that the majority of those conditions are brought on through diet. Now, I also want to say that if you have a patient that's being treated for all three of those conditions, boy, you're going to see that patient more regularly than normal, and you will create a whole host of other conditions that they will have to come back and see you for. Now, I'm 65 years old, or younger, I would say. I'm fortunate that I had a chance to get a grip of what was going on in the examination room when I looked face to face with my doctor and said, look, I know that there are alternative measures in nutritional health that would alleviate these starches from not being broken down in my body, because some of them are coming there through non-ingested. So therefore, I'm not eating all of these starches. They are in my system, and they're not hereditary. No, I know that diabetes is not hereditary. And type 1 and type 2, we definitely know is not hereditary, because the type 1 is juvenile diabetes, and the mother is usually eating well while carrying a baby. And when the baby is born, the baby's fed well, either through a substance, a breast milk, or possibly through a supplement. But we must look at this. Is this a hoax to get as many Black people into the doctor being treated for a condition that can easily be treated through diet? Is it? And does stress bring on this condition? I found out that it does. And after researching it, I found out that stress can be alleviated. It is a leading cause of diabetic type 1 and type 2. Now, you must understand, when they talk about insulin resistant, sometimes you can overflood the pancreas with insulin. And when they talk about resistant, what do you mean resistant? If the body is already producing insulin, why would you be pushing more into the vessels? We, as African Americans, have to take a stand on this. We cannot just take this laying down. This is a serious matter, because once you've been diagnosed with diabetes, and if you're insulin resistant, you're going to get more insulin. And what does that do? Put more stress on the kidneys and a whole host of problems that goes with the pancreatic problem of your stomach being infiltrated with E. coli up in the intestine, cause a number of different things. You will create bacteria in the intestine, and you will create E. coli, and E. coli will begin to grow in the intestine, and it will cause a number of mucus and fungus in the stomach, and the E. coli can literally build up. Now, why do we want to create a whole host of problems that we don't have presently? It's very vital that you guys have got to start speaking to your doctors and asking to see a nutritionist, because this is a nutritional problem and deficit. Once you talk to the nutrition, you will discover that there are things that can address the carbohydrate in digestion. And it's not all a sugar problem, because you need sugar to create energy in the body. And when you don't have the energy in the body, you cannot function. Your body is mechanical. It must have sugar to have energy. Now, the carbohydrates is what you have to look at. Complex carbohydrates. What type of carbohydrates are you ingesting? Has the doctor looked at your diet and told you that you must get a grip of those carbohydrates and you're not digesting them? Has he referred you to a nutritionist or an alternative chiropractor who can look at your diet? If no, then you must sit down and have that talk with your doctor, because most dead doctors tell no lies. And most doctors are in a profession of a business, and they're trying to keep their business up. And without you as a patient, they don't have a business. But it's better to keep you alive than to have you hanging on for dear life, ready to go on renal dialysis. And that is the final stage. You don't want to end up with a worn out kidney, and now your kidney cannot filter. Now, if the kidney is filtering out the medicine that the doctor is giving, and if the pancreas and the liver are throwing off this medication, it must be toxic, because the liver is doing its job when it filters out toxic material. And the kidneys are doing their job when it filters out toxic material. And if this medicine is that toxic, then maybe, just maybe, the doctor needs to know about it, and he needs to reconsider reordering an alternative medicine for you. Because there's a number of us that are literally dying off this medicine because our organs are working far too hard to throw out the toxicity that's in these so-called medicines. Now, let's look at the term medicine. Anything that's toxic cannot be a medicine. But we have to understand that Black folks are being privy to this. Now it is considered as a Black person's disease. Diabetes is where lower socioeconomic people acquire diabetes and high blood pressure. And then finally, renal dialysis. How can we accept this as our condition? You don't have to accept it as your condition. And you can literally talk to the doctor about alternative measures. If there's something diabolically going on in your body, you don't have to jump up and take a prescription, because there are awful lot of side effects in that prescription that might do you more harm than good. Now, I'm talking to African Americans. I'm not talking to the whole world right now. This is a personal discussion with my brothers and sisters who are being taken for a ride. I've seen far too many people in my family who stuck by the needle continuously to only watch their pancreas be shot, then their kidneys to be destroyed, and then eventually to end up on renal dialysis. And now they're waiting for an organ donor to donate a kidney because their kidneys are shot from fighting, trying to filter out the toxics that are in the medicines that you're taking. Now, you must be very leery, because when AIDS came out, it wasn't the AIDS that was killing people, it was the treatment and the education of the treatment. So we must be very leery about the fact that if we change our eating habit and our diet and our nutritional supplement, we can turn our conditions around. I know it because I have been able to address this problem called predisposition diabetes from a nutritional perspective. And getting a hold of nutritional perspective is everything. In 7 days, you can regrow cells and you recondition your organs to function and to filter like they're supposed to. But if they're clogged up with toxic, you are going to put stress on your kidneys, on your pancreas, and your liver, because they won't be able to filter out the toxic. But they are doing their job when they filter out the toxic, and when the toxics are being thrown off. That is to let you know you are building up toxics from the medicines. And if this is the case, you must say something to your doctor. You cannot continue to go on saying that you're treating yourself with your medicines. Now, I am appalled because there has been so much research done on this condition. Now, African Americans, you need to wake up. This is no longer a fairy tale or fallacy or what I think or what I suppose. It is now documented and substantiated that this whole host of conditions called type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes is not a disease, and it can be cured through diet. I repeat, it is not a disease. And to diagnose the kidneys from shutting down because of a sugar overload is incorrect as well. It is a starch imbalance and it is a carbohydrate imbalance. So they have not even given a diagnosis properly, and they have not sat down to explain to individuals who are intelligent enough to understand the proper cause of the condition. They have falsified the condition by saying that it is an overload of sugar and that you must go in and properly remove the sugars. That is not true. You need your sugars. You need brain power to function, and you must have sugars and glucose in your body to be able to have energy, to be able to raise your head up off the pillow. Now, I know these things because I've taken anatomy, physiology, pathology, and biology and chemistry. And I've worked in a laboratory with a pathologist and assisted in autopsies and handled the histology and cytology. So you must understand the mechanism of a cell, and you must have an understanding of what these medicines are going to do to your body once you ingest them. Now, a lot of you are never going to come off these medicines because you believe everything your doctors say. But for those of you who are looking for an alternative option and want to stay alive and want to use nutrition to combat their condition of their pancreas resistance to insulin and of their kidneys, so that their kidneys are properly filtering, you must not overload your kidneys or your liver, because it does the job of filtering. And when it no longer does the job of filtering, it will shut down. Then you will need a transplant of the kidneys or of the liver. Now, I would like to speak to my people. I'm not speaking to you, Caucasians, because you'll never come back and address me by saying I gave you the wrong information. I am speaking to the African Americans out there who are being frequently diagnosed with having the three-part quadrum of diabetes, liver distress with renal failure, and high blood pressure. High blood pressure can also be addressed through meditation as well. And these stresses that are in our body is because economical distress, not having enough funds to accommodate all of the needs in your home, will bring on this stress. And they know it. And they've created this stress. And it is a substance that will help push you over the edge. But you can take some time out of your daily schedule to sit and meditate on God and meditate on the word day and night, because this will alleviate some of the stress. Now, the stresses on the financial part, that's another thing. But in the meantime, you can get yourself healthy again. You can start functioning without worrying about a stroke. I've known people that was on their medication, so-called medication, that still experienced a stroke. And it had nothing to do with them not taking that medicine, because they took it on a daily basis and they still experienced a stroke. A stroke does not necessarily have to come from high blood sugar, or it does not have to come from elevated blood sugars. A stroke can come from other causes by having your insulin that is resistant, having too much insulin in the blood. Now, we've got to have a conference just like we have had on our melanin. We've got to have a conference on so-called sugar diabetes being the black folks' condition, and high blood pressure and renal dialysis. These are not our condition. We were not privy to these conditions when we came up through slavery. They didn't exist for us. And there was no so-called diabetes that was diagnosed for the African American at one point. And in our society, we were always mandated to pray and to meditate. What happened to your time out for praying and meditating? Well, the Yoruba people believe that all of us should come together under corporate prayer and pray customarily at the same time throughout the week, so that we have a corporate prayer and we slow down our vital signs so that we can meditate, and the meditation will begin to align all of our organs and our skeletal system and our glandular system so that we slow down the pace. We are melanin enriched people. What is wrong with us? Our melanin helps to cure whatever illness is in our body. Why is it that we never had to take anything for sugar diabetes during slavery time, and our body just aligned our blood pressure? Do you not know you have no business slowing down the blood pressure? Those are your vital signs. And everyone's blood pressure is not the same, especially Caucasians and blacks. They're different. You have no business slowing down the vital signs of the blood pressure, because there's other adaptations that the body can make for having a higher blood pressure. Your systolic and diastolic are not always the same in every diverse race of people. And if you push down the blood pressure and slow it down, then you cannot let the body compensate for any inadequacy. You must not adjust the blood pressure. And all that medicine that they're giving out there to push the blood pressure down, to silence the blood pressure, can be bringing on a heart attack or a stroke. Because your body will adjust its own blood pressure based on the diabolic complications or problems that's going on in the body. The body will do it on its own. We're doing far too much by going into these doctors, letting them tamper with our blood pressure. And I want to warn some of you now are living and dying by this blood pressure medicine and not knowing that you can automatically adjust your own blood pressure through diet and rest. And you do not need to have someone force the blood pressure down. That is what can force you into having a stroke. How do I know these things? I worked as a medical assistant, my first job in the allied health profession. And I took the vital signs of each client that came in. And I knew how to take the diastolic and systolic blood pressure. And I understood what it meant. And every person, based on their weight, systology, and diastolic, did not have to be the same. And everyone did not want medicine to push down their blood pressure, because you could be pushing in a heart attack. So it's very vital, Black people, that before we start running to these doctors for these preventative maintenance checkups, make sure you know your body. And it's differently because you have wiring from your hair. So from toe, you're mechanically in there at the mercy of the doctor and throw yourself on the table and say, here I am, do whatever you have to me. You have the ability to heal yourself. Your cells every 7 days renew themselves. And with melanin in your body, your melanin in your body can also regroup and heal parts of your body. And your cells, you need to start talking to them. But you cannot submit yourself under the auspices that you're being treated for diabetes, when in fact, the type 1 diabetes that they talk about, that's juvenile diabetes, cannot be possible because the mother is feeding that child and the child is getting the basic essential needs. How would their body be expressing a disharmony, indicating that they have a flood of overabundance of sugar? Your body has to process sugar in order to have brain power. Your body, in order to think. A child cannot go to school without having energy for the brain power. It takes fuel and fat and sugars for the brain to function. Now, that diabetes doesn't exist as a disease. And why are we just not catching on? There are white doctors out there now that are prescribing a whole host of metabolic nutritional substance to cure or to address disharmony in your body, such as renal dialysis and such as kidney dysfunction. So why are we still scared that we're going to die from a heart attack or have an amputation? You have an amputation from the side effects of the drugs that you take. And some of us are now getting amputation even after taking the so-called cure process, and that must be through diet. And I demanded an opportunity to address whatever conditions I had with diet, and I put my foot down because I didn't need somebody to push me over the rail, to push me into suicide through taking medicine that could possibly cause me to kill myself. It's very vital that we should understand this. Now, insulin is very important, and we must understand that we have to know if our body is insulin resistant. We cannot just start pushing insulin in. Insulin is laced with E. coli. Do you know that? Insulin, the drug, is laced with E. coli. And when we look at what E. coli is, and this is what a doctor told me, it is laced with E. coli. It is bacteria in the body. E. coli is nothing but fecal matter, bowel, and is laced with bacteria inside of the insulin, and it goes to the body, creating parasites. And when it gets into the organs such as the stomach, it creates parasites, and it makes a whole host of parasitic objects in your body. This could affect your metabolism, and you could eventually be on renal dialysis, because E. coli is bacteria and is bad for your gut. And if E. coli is building up in your gut, you are creating bacteria that can be like when they talked about a long time ago having all of this bacteria in their gut and having to get the bacteria out because it will become like worms. So insulin in and of itself has a whole host of problems with it because it has E. coli. Now, I'm not a doctor, and let me offer a disclaimer. I'm not a doctor, and I can't recommend anything to you, but I'm just telling you what I did. And I will say, for the benefit of African American, you need to check with your children who have been diagnosed as having type 1 juvenile diabetes. You need to make sure that you're not flooding their body with insulin, which is going to bring about E. coli in their intestines. And now they're going to have worms and they will have parasites. Now, I know this because on what this insulin would do to my body. And some people ingest it through a tablet, and some people have injection called E. coli. And now, if you know what the side effects are, wouldn't it be better if you turn it to nutritional process by talking to the nutritionist? And if she don't know about diet, then what in the world is she doing in a position as a diabetic, as a nutritionist? So I want to say, for the benefit of our people, we've got to get it together. There are tons of doctors now that are alternative, that have a solution and an alternative for diabetes. And it doesn't have to be taking several different forms of insulin. And we must understand that insulin is not a cure-all for anything. And there are side effects, as I told you. Regular insulin screening, let's see. Glucose is a carbohydrate compound. And if you don't have enough in the body, you will have a problem. But you must understand, lactic acid will build up in the body from a high starch acid. And sometimes that comes from a diet where your body can't break it down. Large amounts of lactic acid is toxic in the body. Now, there are a number of drugs that the doctor, and these drugs have side effects. And some of them had heart pain, diarrhea, lactic acid, tremors, trouble breathing, reduced vitamin B12. Now, if you need vitamin B12 to function and to have your energy, and if they reduce your vitamin B12, then you are going to have all kinds of low levels of red blood cell, dizziness, anemia, and these could cause a lot of side effects. But it's very vital that because they've now put renal dialysis, high blood pressure, and sugar diabetes all together as a group. Now we're taking it on as if it's our own condition, that Black folks brought this on. No, we didn't bring it on. Somebody created this and caused it a disease. It is not a disease to have glucose imbalances. It is a sugar, and it is not a sugar imbalance. It is a carbohydrate imbalance, and you can change that through diet. You don't have to accept that diagnosis because it is not a death sentence for you. And diabetes is not a death sentence. I was told, and someone tried to scare me out of my whip, that I would have a stroke and that I would go into a coma. Oh, Lord. They fix it so that you cannot go without this medicine. And you got some people that are taking this high blood pressure medicine like it's a death sentence. And they don't realize that you cannot force the blood pressure down. You must allow the blood pressure to adjust and adapt itself based on what's going on in your metabolic makeup. But I'm warning some people that are on the verge of having amputations and losing their toes and their feet and arms. And now they're scared because if they think if they get off the medicine, they won't be able to exist and that they'll end up with an amputation. Well, you might end up with an amputation anyway from taking the medicine. Now, I know I'm stepping on a lot of people's toes right now who want to continue to give out prescriptions and medicine. And you don't have to accept it, because I didn't. And I am so happy that I did further research and I didn't just jump up and take the medicine, because the doctor spent a whole week trying to convince me how great this medicine would be. After I researched, I realized that I could have killed myself by taking the medicine with all of these side effects. Can you imagine taking insulin in and creating E. coli in my intestine? Now I have a whole host of parasites that are growing around in my stomach. Now not only have a pancreas imbalance, but now I have a whole host of bacteria that is harvesting in my intestine. We must look into this. We cannot take this thing laying down. And if you do, you'll be a fool because you're bringing it on yourself. You have some options here. And don't think that you don't have options and that you're giving your body over to the hospital for research. These are practicing doctors. They are all practicing, and they are hoping that they find a cure, but they have not found a cure for mostly anything, but just for, I understand, dealing with, they can't give you enough medicine to get rid of the E. coli in your stomach because once it starts growing, it continues to produce. So we have to stop and think. How about meditating today? How about doing corporate prayer and waiting for some of the brothers and sisters to get on the prayer line, and let's start meditating. Let's take a few hours out of our day to meditate. We can stop these conditions from going forward. We can find a cure for them. And they don't just have to be a disease because these are deficiencies in our food additive. Let's change our diet and we can make a difference. Thank you so very much for tuning in to Omi's production studio. And you've been listening to Maddie Harvey's Baby Sister. And thank you, and I will be tuning in with you again. Remember, you can address these basic conditions such as renal dialysis to avoid from having to go on the renal dialysis machine, the diabetes by not forcing your blood pressure down and allowing your blood pressure to naturally adjust itself, and by not taking the insulin that is full of E. coli that is going to rupture in your stomach and cause you to be further a victim. And now you have parasites to get rid of. Think about this now. This is insulin that we're talking about taking that's supposed to help the resistant body. And the kidneys are now overwhelmed because they've been trying to throw off the toxic of the medicine. And the liver is overwhelmed because it's been trying to throw off the toxins. And now we are wondering what in the world is going on. We are faced with many, many more conditions. We can solve it by changing our diet and telling our doctor we want to deal with the alternative medicine through our diet first. Thank you so much. And you've been listening to Maddie Harvey's Baby Sister. And then please do tune in and make sure you're taking control of your nutritional diet and understanding that the doctor is practicing medicine and you must have a conversation with your doctor and have input on your life, and don't let someone else take over your life, not even a doctor. You are the first doctor. Let him know that you will make the final decision. Thank you very much. Have a great day.